Welcome, welcome. I'm Reverend Karen Lewis, and I am going to calm down here, I swear. It was very, very different than I thought I would enter the stage, but it just has been such an uplifting. And that song so perfectly speaks to what we are going to talk about today, and also what we heard the reading about in the pre-service meditation. It always surprises me how life has a tendency to just come together perfectly, does it not? Yes. And it's not to say that there weren't some things that didn't quite work out as planned this morning. I'm sure we all had our experiences. And what matters, that we are fully present here now. So today is going to be a very, maybe physical service. We are going to come together and, inspired by that great song, feel our physical being, because the spiritual life does not say there's not a physicality to it. The spiritual life calls us forward to be so fully clear and aware of the goodness of life and love and peace and harmony that is everywhere present, and we are called forth as vessels to bring it into this manifest universe. That is our job. There are so many songs that sing of we are the hearts and the hands of the divine. And that is truly what we are. And so today, inspired by all that has been already said on this wonderful annual theme that is this spiritual hero's journey, we're coming to this place, and just a fair warning, we are going to be physical today. I think that's a song too. We could have done that. Let's get physical. So this week, I was reminded of something that I used to do when I was 9 years old. We had just moved from the outskirts of town into the center of town, and I made it a game, and perhaps it was to deal with all the changes, but I made it a game that every time when I would go to Main Street, the center street in our little town, I would utilize all of the walls that are present in a German town. They are just various walls in front of shops or in front of people's residence, and kids just walk on them. And so I made it my goal to come from our home and to go all the way to where I was going in town without touching the ground longer than I could hold my breath. So I would go on a wall, and then I could see I'm here, and this is where I want to go. So I had to hold my breath, run over there, and climb on the next wall. Now, I was reminded of that this week, and I was like, how is that relating to this talk called Looking Ahead? And here's what I came up with. When we do something like that, it is so important that we are fully present to where we are and look ahead to where we want to go. And so that is what we're doing in this talk today, in this message. I'm inviting you in on this journey where we become very clear of where we are, what is ours to do, and how can we align ourselves with that. We are going to talk a little bit about spiritual bypass, that trap of saying it's all good, and how not to fall into that. And then by the end of the message, we are going to be lifted up by a beautiful example of a beloved that is living full out right at the moment. So that is where we're going. Are we ready? Yes. So we're going to start with the physicality. In our first slide, the first quote by Dr. Ernest Holmes says, the spiral of life is upward evolution carries us forward. And so it takes us to be aware of where we are in order to allow this evolutionary spiral to take us forward, upward. And so I ask all of you, every person, if everybody who is able to please rise. Please rise if you are able, if it's safe to do so. And I want you to feel your feet on the ground. Just 2 days ago, I visited my youngest daughter, who is just about ready to welcome her first child into the world. And as I walked in, she was standing feet about shoulder width apart and grounded. And as I walked in, I thought, Mother Nature is calling her forth. And so let us feel that every moment, God, the divine, Mother Nature is truly calling us forth to feel where we are. Feel your feet on the ground. Know that right where you stand is truly holy ground. And notice your breath, that beautiful gift of the divine that enters our body constantly and leaves it, the gift of life. And take a deeper breath and feel your body expanding. If you feel comfortable and nobody is around you, allow your arms to open wide. Audible out breath. Claim the space that you are occupying. There's nobody else in that space but you, and you have to claim it. Notice how the energy is flowing easier as we become wider, greater. And if possible, step forward, step into it, really feel it. Allow yourself 2 minutes of physicality in this spiritual life. And now, bring into alignment that you want to bring into the world. If you have a word for 2021, perhaps that word, that feeling tone of that word comes forth. It might be simplicity, or it might be power, faith, sufficiency, love. Find your word, your quality that you want to be in alignment with, and allow it to fill up every inch and every cell of your being. Get larger. Let's fill up the room that you're in. And notice as we do that, gratitude bubbles up naturally. It just happens. The enormous gratefulness for this gift that we are given every moment. And then we let it go. We let it go. Remaining within us is this feeling of connection, this feeling of gratitude, but we let it go. And we open our eyes and we come back into this now moment and have a seat, snuggle back into the couch or wherever you are. That, my beloveds, is a physical experience of our spiritual mind treatment. Did you catch it? Did you catch it? Right? We recognize the allness of life. We place ourselves in it. We become very clear what we want to align ourselves with and have that pull us forward. And there's no time and space in the mind of the divine, so we don't have to wait for it to be manifested in order to feel grateful. Quite the opposite. Right now, we are invited to feel that gratitude. And that is what lifts us into the outer manifestation. And then we let it be. But what happens so often? I don't know if you had this experience in your life, but I remember times in my life where I approach the universe with a thimble, where I am very aware of the allness of life, and yet I hold myself so small that I can't feel the abundance of life. Now, in this teaching, we know that the universe, God, Spirit, is an abundant presence, infinite. It's the eternal loving kindness. It is the eternal grace. And so when we approach it with our limited vessel, we might say things like, this is all what's there for me. Perhaps we even feel, I only deserve this much because of some limitation I picked up on the way. And then if we are lucky, we find a teaching such as this one, we find a community such as this one, and we step in and we experience that beautiful feeling of being opened up by love. Perhaps we enter into classes, we enter into relationships, we blossom open. How often have you heard people say, it's so wonderful to see you blossoming open? Yes. And then perhaps we find ourselves approaching life with a much greater vessel. And we're like, whoa, look at this. Life is good. Life is good. I have so much more. I have more love. I have more life. I have more abundance. I have more joy. I have more. And we feel it overflowing. And that, beloveds, is that upward spiral of life. And we enjoy it. And we tell everybody about it. And then we come to this time where we're like, but it's still just this much. Those people over there have a much greater experience. And that is where we are called to deepen into the realization that no vessel with which I can come to life can ever give me that feeling of drinking of the living waters that I can have then if I let go of any vessel and become the vessel. If I am willing to let go of something that needs to be filled up and realize that who I am, who you are, is that vessel. Ernest Holmes says it this way: unless we become the living embodiment of love and light, we shall have no justification in saying that God is love and light. So what that speaks to me to is that I have to be willing to allow the allness of life to have its way through me as me. Self-awareness. That's kind of the business we are in a spiritual community, right? We come together with a willingness to sometimes hold up the mirror and help one another to become more aware of what obstacles might be in our way to be that vessel for life. So self-awareness allows us to come into greater alignment with that which we want to bring forth in the world. We have talked about it in this series, Immersed in Truth, that meditation, for example, brings us to the place where we let go of our limiting beliefs and feel, experience the grace that we are, the love that we are. And then there's this thing called spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass is present in our teaching because when someone is going through whatever life is presenting to them, they might be getting caught up in this notion that what we say that we are responsible for everything that happened to us. Because that is one of the things that we say, that everything out in the manifested universe that we experience, there's some sort of agreement that made it possible for us to experience it. I like to think about spiritual bypass this way. Something happened, maybe there's a big storm in my life, and I say, oh, no, there's no storm. It's sunny. It's all good. Nothing is happening. Ignoring what's happening. Where we need to be careful is that we don't get pulled into seeing this storm and getting stuck in, I am not worthy, and that is why this storm is happening. Because that does not allow us to become part of that spiritual uplifting that life provides for us. So how do we do it? How can we hold both of those seemingly opposites in our life? Try this. I see what is happening. I allow myself to feel all of the emotions of it. And that allows me to walk through it. It reminds me of the biography in 5 short chapters. I've shared it here before. I'll just go over it real quickly because it's exactly what is possible when we are very aware of our part in any storm that is happening in our lives. So the first chapter is, I walk down the street. There's a great big hole. I don't see the hole. I fall in. It is not my fault. It takes me forever to get out. Chapter 2. I walk down the street. There's a great big hole. I see the hole. I fall in. It is not my fault. It still takes me forever to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the street. It's a great big hole. I see the hole. I fall into the hole. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the street. There's a great big hole. I walk around the hole. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street. What an amazing, amazing clarification of the difference of engaging in spiritual bypass and saying, no, it's not there, versus taking ownership and walking through it. Mark Napo says, we can only see as far into the world as we can see into ourselves. How grateful I am for this center, for this teaching, for this constant invitation to all of us to know more about ourselves. If we are someone who just stopped by this morning's message and says, oh, I heard something that interests me, or if we are part of this organization of this invitation for spiritual growth for many, many years. Because at any time we can step into that spiral in our personal lives and experience a greater life, greater living, sharing more, being more, making good on that impetus of life that has imbued us with that uniqueness of gifts and talents. Might it be music or singing or painting or dancing or speaking or loving or cooking, whatever it may be. We owe it to life to learn so much about ourselves that we can take it out into the world. That we are confident enough to forgive ourselves and others, and to be all that we came here to be. One of the incredible examples of living that life out full is a young woman named Amanda. Now, Amanda grew up in Los Angeles. She is a twin, and so her and her twin sister were raised by a single mom in Los Angeles. And she had a speech impairment. And she felt called to express through words. Now, you can see that that might be called a storm, right? This desire from a very early age to express in words and having the challenge of not being able to have the words come out in a way that they sounded in her mind. And perhaps you are at a place in your life where you feel like you have gotten the call that Reverend Leslie so beautiful illustrated in her talks, you know, where the call to adventure, where the call to live a deeper, more fulfilled life is placed. We hear it, we feel called to do something, and then we stumble over an old belief. Am I really ready to do that? Am I really able to do that? Let's take a moment and allow for yourself to come so clearly what it is that you hear the call, that you feel the pull, and yet there's part of you that says, nope, not going to do that. Self-awareness, the kindness with which we understand ourselves, allows us to be in alignment to bring forth that, what we are called to do. Because, make no mistake, if you hear the call and you don't answer it, it will not happen. It's not like the next person can pick it up. They might step in, but it will be different. Your unique expression, your unique gift in the world cannot be given by anybody else. So let's breathe that in. So back to Amanda. She grows up, she has a speech impediment, and she's working for years. For years, she is working to overcome it. So much so that she has been chosen the youngest inauguration poet there has ever been. 22 years. She is of age. And if you had a chance to watch that beautiful meeting of life in the present moment that millions around the world witnessed, when she took the podium on January 20th and she recited her poem, "The Hill We Climb." There's a line in that poem that is speaking of her proudness, that she lives in a country where, and these are her words, a skinny black girl can dream about becoming president only to find herself reciting for one. Oh, that line gets me every time, every time. And I think about my personal journey. Has there been a time years ago where I was always sitting right there in the second row in the aisle, feeling like I'm sitting, witnessing greatness as these wonderful spiritual leaders of this organization moved this organization to greater and greater success in the world? I never, ever thought I could be one of those spiritual leaders. And here I am, one of the senior ministers of this amazing organization. And here's my promise, that although I didn't dream of being this, now that I am it, I am fully committed to do whatever I can to move this organization into its greater next to be. And that's what Amanda's doing. Every time, she says, every time before she steps up onto a platform, onto a stage, she reminds herself of the spiritual giants that on whose shoulders she is standing. And she said that is what gives her the confidence to express the way she does. So beautiful, with such grace, giving this country such hope. And then I learned something very interesting. Her grandmother, I believe her name is Bertha Gorman, is a member of a Centers for Spiritual Living in Sacramento. And I was like, perhaps. As a little girl, she heard those ideas that who you are is enough. And if you have the impetus of having greatness in your life, however that may look, you are given the gifts to become that. She ends her amazing poem with these words: "There's always light if only we are brave enough to see it. If only we are brave enough to be it." Beloveds, this is our time. We are called to be all that we can be. I am so grateful you are on this journey with us. Sometimes as a passenger, sometimes as a co-pilot, and at times you will be asked to hold the wheel. Thank you. And so it is. And so now we do in the physical, right here, right now, exactly what we are called to do. I invite every licensed practitioner, every minister, every person who feels inspired to take a stand. Let us stand together. Let us know that this is what we are called here to do. And so we take a breath and we recognize the allness of life, sweet spirit, infinite intelligence, that which is greater than we are, that has always been and will always be the eternal loving kindness, the eternal givingness of Spirit. And we recognize that as there is no place where God is not, God is right where I am. And this is the truth of myself, and this is the truth of every beloved. Wherever you find yourself on your spiritual journey, that is the truth. And so we breathe in. We breathe in love and peace and harmony. We breathe in the recognition that these qualities of the divine are at the very center of our being, is truly what we are made of. And so we give ourselves permission to have them blossom and shared as we align with love, as we align with peace, as we align with compassion and kindness. We're experiencing this body of beloveds growing so wide that any prayer request that has come towards the center in form of a written prayer request or a phone call or a prayer request on the heart is lifted up into this light. For there is always light. If only we are willing to see it, if only we are willing to be it, and so we be the light. We take the goodness that we have experienced in our life and we share it with the world in such gratitude for this gift. Thank you, life. And so it is.